on live on YouTube as well. So we have over 37 questions for this live stream. So we had a bunch of input on the email that I sent out. That was basically, hey, what are your top 2 questions for Dryfire? And a ton of responses. Now I condensed most of them down into, I got rid of duplicate questions, kind of highlighted some of the big ones that people were asking, but we have 37 questions, which is still a lot. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. You can drop questions in here. I'm not going to promise that I'm actually going to answer them right now, because like I said, I have a whole bunch pre-laid out that we want to cover. So that being said, for the next little bit, we're going to cover these 37 questions in as much detail as I possibly can. I'm going to run through them pretty quickly, so stay tuned. If you guys want to hit me up in a message afterwards, you're welcome to. If you guys want to shoot me a message on social media, again, welcome to. So the first question that I have regarding Dryfire is it expensive? And no, it's not. Dryfire is the cheapest way to train because it doesn't require any ammunition, and you can do it from your own home. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything extra. All you really need is your handgun. So you can use your concealed carry gun. You can use your bedside gun, your competition gun. That's all you need. You don't need any extra special gear. All you need is a handgun, and it is the cheapest way to train. Now, the next question gets into a little bit more interesting, like, is Dryfire effective if you don't have the recoil? Can you actually gain training value out of this technique if you don't have recoil? And yes. Now, I will still tell you that recoil is important to have especially as you progress as a shooter. But if you want to learn all the mechanics of shooting, all you need to do is Dryfire. There's so much value in simply building a grip, presenting the gun, pressing a trigger, which is the most simple of Dryfire drills. And you don't need to have recoil for that. You don't need to have recoil for a reload or an unloaded start or anything like that. You don't need to have recoil for movement drills. Like, there's so much that you can do that doesn't require recoil to happen. Now, if you want to get good at shooting on the move and like watching the dot and timing the shots to make sure we're getting accurate hits, or you want to get good at, let's see here, what is splits, like getting your splits down so you get less time between shots. Those things do require ammo. These do require recoil, and it's going to be a good way to test your grip as well. So we verify all of our things that we do in Dryfire by Dryfire, but the Dryfire fixes the process. So I actually think the Dryfire is more effective because we don't have recoil. How do we practice with a striker fire gun? So this is question number 3 out of 37. With a striker fire gun, what I like to do, and this depends on what drill I'm running, but generally speaking, with a striker fire gun, I like to come up, present, and prep the trigger. So if I've got multiple targets that I'm working on, my big thing with striker fire is working the trigger prep. So if you look here, I have slack, wall, prep. And if you see this, if I stop at the wall, there's still a lot of movement in the trigger to get to prep point. So slack, wall, prep. So once I get to prep point, what I'll work on now is start resetting and prepping the trigger. So I want to reset, prep, reset, prep, reset, prep, reset, prep. Instead of just coming up and smashing the trigger and just working a dead trigger, or with a Glock, you have completely dead trigger. It'll sit there at the back. That's not effective. I also don't want to just have to take one shot and then rack every time. So I'll bounce between multiple targets, simply taking it to that prep point, which is really the feeling that you need to get with the trigger. Anyway, I mean, you can work on smashing through the trigger. That's a different reset, prep, and just simply hold it at that point. On the last target, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and press it through to confirm I'm all the way at the prep point. I was showing the YouTube guys that right there is fully prepped. That means there's no pre-travel. Once I've made the decision to take a shot, there's no pre-travel in order to take that shot. So question number 4 was actually, it wasn't structured as a question. It's kind of funny because the guy was like, this reminds me of my granddad or my dad, because he said firing pins, Dryfire breaks firing pins. It doesn't. Okay. I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of repetitions on everything from Atlases to SIGs to Glocks, you name it. I've done tons and tons and tons of dry fire, and it doesn't break firing pins. The only time I've seen strikers or firing pins break has been with, I saw one guy had a couple of Zev, like lightened strikers in his Glock. It was a super lightweight titanium striker that was supposed to be faster and better. And I saw that break a couple of times, but that was it. That's the only time I've seen strikers break. Now, that's a myth, and it was created way back in the day when people were doing flintlocks or cap and ball type guns. And if you dry fired on that, yes, that could break your nipple that was on the gun. Could break the gun itself because you didn't have anything to block that. So don't dry fire those, but do dry fire your modern firearms. Another question. Question number 5 out of 37 was, how long should I dry fire and how many reps? So I guess it's 2 questions technically, but how long and how many reps should I do? That is totally up to you. Now, I will tell you, you can over dry fire. If you are pushing yourself properly, when you're doing dry fire, you're going to fatigue your muscles, which means your forearms are going to be sore. Your shoulders may be getting sore, especially if you start hunching your shoulders. That's going to be an indicator that, hey, I need to relax those shoulders. I want to come up and I want to build a good platform, good structure here. And I don't want to, do bad form, which is going to, irritate me even more. But if you're doing it right, we're going to have a good grip, which means our forearms are going to be on fire after about 20 to 30 minutes of dry fire. Your hands are going to be hurting after 20 to 30 minutes of dry fire, of dedicated dry fire, if that's what you're doing. Now, if you're doing poor reps where you're loose on the grip because it's tiring, then yeah, you can probably dry fire for 2 or 3 hours at a time. I will tell you, the longest that I would recommend going is no more than an hour. If you can get in a good hour session, especially if you're working like movement and stuff, you can you're not focused super hard on grip, but I wouldn't push more than an hour. And even an hour is really pushing it. I look for like 20 to 40 minutes is usually the sweet spot. Anything more than that, you start to see your reps degrade and you're not actually maintaining the focus needed to get the full training value out of those reps. So no more than an hour, but typically 20 to 30, maybe 40 minutes is the sweet spot. If you're before that, you're kind of getting in the warm-up mode. If you're after that, you're starting to get burnt out. So again, play with it for yourself. You can do multiple sets throughout the day. I know a lot of people who do 15 minutes at a time. They'll do that 4 times a day. People who have their own offices, they're able to bring their guns in. That's a great option for you. But if not, do what you got to do. Okay, how to keep the strong hand relaxed when shooting more than 2 rounds. This guy was asking about this because when he's shooting more rounds, he starts to get trigger freeze. Trigger freeze is a direct symptom of tension in your body. So when we're shooting, we want to have a good firm grip. And I encourage people to do a full grip. I don't want you to relax this right hand. I don't want you to relax that hand at all. I want you to be able to move that index finger quickly. And how I do that is I focus my pressure with these 2 fingers, middle finger, ring finger, and I pull straight back into my hand. That way I'm able to, yes, EDC training, I will save this video and I'll post it up later on. That way I'm able to get a full grip on this. I'm able to work this independently of this grip, okay, because I'm focused on these 2 instead of focusing on fully have these trigger freezes. You may need to look at the tension, the rest of your body. A lot of times we build tension in our shoulders. We start to go like this, and I see that's when I usually have trigger freezes. I'm trying to go fast, and sometimes you just need to kind of relax a little bit. But I wouldn't try relaxing this hand necessarily. That's going to make the gun bounce around a lot, and that's not what we want for consistency. All right, grip and trigger finger placement. So we talked a little bit here. Okay, so my support hand is going to fit right there on the bottom of the trigger guard. And then I'm coming in and I'm trying to crush this grip. I actually want to kind of lock these fingertips into here, and I'm crushing the back of the gun, almost like a nutcracker. So if the gun was a walnut, I'm sitting there and putting pressure on the back of that. That allows me to really lock it in. Now, the other important part of this is keeping my shoulders down, okay? And I build this and bring the gun up to my eyes. So I'm going to have a slight bend in my elbows. As you can see, my elbows are bent. I don't want to lock my elbows out. That is not a good technique. We want to keep our elbows bent. That's going to allow you to maintain recoil. Now, trigger finger placement on the trigger itself. it doesn't matter too much, but generally speaking, I want to keep it kind of right in the middle of my pad. So it's going to look something like that in the middle of the pad of my trigger finger. I don't want to run my finger so far into the gun where I'm missing that first knuckle. If you're on the first knuckle and it's comfortable for you and you're able to be accurate and maintain good consistency with your shots and speed with your shots, cool. I don't really care. The only issue that we run into is we're over inserting and now we're shifting our grip to do so. So if my grip is right here, and if you look at this way, you both can see this. I got front sight, rear sight, wrist, and elbow. This is a straight line. When I put my arm at a 90-degree angle, this should be a straight line down my arm. Okay. If I rotate this gun like this and I put my finger deeper into the trigger guard, like so, okay, that creates a problem for the path of recoil. Now that recoil is going over top of my thumb knuckle instead of down into my arm, and I'm not going to control it. It's going to be much more sporadic. It's not going to be nearly as consistent. So when we look at how we're building the grip, that's what I want to make sure that I'm doing, and that's going to put my finger where it needs to go. Now, if you have really short fingers, if you got tiny little hands, then you may have to shift that grip a little bit over around the side of the gun in order to get the finger onto the trigger fully. All right, so that was question number 7 out of 37. And we are crushing through this. So we're at 11, 12 minutes now. And we're, I don't know, 7 questions in. So we're going to keep on rolling. Dryfire Systems. Do I need any special equipment? What is the best Dryfire system out there? I don't like Dryfire Systems. I'll just say that right out. I recently picked up one for rifle. I'm going to try it out. I don't have any feedback for you on that yet. I've tried a lot of the other ones just to see if they work, see if I like them, see if I get any value out of them. I'm not a huge fan. Everyone that I've tried, everyone that I've seen is more of a gimmick. Now, the benefit of a Dryfire tool, a Dryfire, make it more of a game. And some people actually doing the Dryfire, having the motivation to go do it. Snap caps. Question on here on the Instagram. I also a question I had written down. Do I need snap caps to Dryfire? You don't. You don't need snap caps to Dryfire. There are some drills that will benefit from having a dummy round or snap caps, such as an unloaded start. So if you have a pistol that that locks back with the mags, for instance, my SIG, if I do an unloaded start with this and there's nothing in the mag and I whack that slide, it's going to lock back. So that's a problem. But snap caps will work for that. Or get yourself a dummy mag. So I like using these dummy mags. For years and years and years, I used regular mags, just empty mags, and they work great. But dummy mags gives a little bit of weight, and now I'm not dropping my $120 mags or $100 mags or $75 mags on the ground repeatedly. So I prefer to use these. Plus, if you're running a striker fire gun, obviously this won't fit in here. But if you're running a striker fire gun, it's going to keep it from locking back. So let's see here. Next, we have how to structure my Dryfire program. So if I'm going to be coming in here and I need to decide how I'm going to structure my Dryfire, that really depends on what your goals are. You need to define what your goals are for your Dryfire, and that's going to help you set up what you're working on. So a lot of people will say, hey, I've got this match coming up. I know I need a Dryfire for it. What do I need a Dryfire on? I don't know. What do you need to work on for yourself? Is it your draw? Is it, what I like to do is I'll take the videos from my last match and I will actually analyze that and see what's working, what part of training is actually working and what's not, and what do I need to work on for the next one. Or I'll take a look at the next match and say, hey, I got a match coming up. I know there's a lot of classifiers, or it's a technical match with a lot of tight targets. So I'm going to work on really refining my trigger press, refining my sight picture, and getting really accurate Dryfire shots. So if that's the case, then yeah, I'm going to work on very precise shots, making sure that I'm not moving those sights at all, and ensure that that's what I'm working on. If you don't have anything to work on, you don't have any major match coming up, in that case, you got to work on something. So find what your weaknesses are. If you don't know what they are, if you're a completely perfectly well-rounded shooter, then maintenance, it becomes a maintenance game. So work on a couple of things. What I typically like to do, what I encourage people to do, is if you want to structure your Dryfire, pick 1 or 2 things to work on for that Dryfire session. So I would talk about Reloads. If I want to work on reloads, I'm going to hammer reloads and maybe work on some vision drills as well. So reloads and target transitions. That's what I'm going to work on this 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes that I'm going to work on Dryfire. And that way I'm not getting distracted. I'm not bouncing from drill to drill to drill. And that's obviously what we want to do. We want to be focused. We want to make sure we're getting good reps. And then we want to call it when we stop getting those good reps. All right, so moving on. We've got, let's see here, number 10. Isolating footwork in tight spaces. So if we're going to do footwork drills, movement drills, we want to look at what we have available as far as room. Now, this isn't a huge room. This is a little laundry room that I'm working on right now. Obviously, you can see some construction going on in the background here, but that's life. So it's not a big room, but we can still do a lot. And this also ties into another question that someone asked is, how do I start incorporating movement into my Dryfire? And it can literally be something as simple as in one position, drawing, settling in, and taking an accurate shot. And then you can analyze how long does it take you to get stable if you're bouncing around like that, and how do we clean that up? So if I can step in and get stable sooner, that's obviously a lot better. That type of a drill, even if it's literally a step over drill where we take, you can put a piece of a belt on the ground or a piece of tape on the ground. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is a sword. I won this at a match in June, and I just picked it up. So if I got this sword on the ground, I can literally do a drill by aiming in here and stepping across. And what I'm looking for is my dot bouncing out of the acceptability zone on my Dryfire target, whether it's a light switch cover or an actual Dryfire target up on the wall. That's a simple movement drill that you can do to start building progress, So moving on, we have private lessons. Do you do private lessons? I do offer private lessons occasionally. My schedule doesn't allow for a lot of them. And when it does, I'll throw them out there, but not very often. It's just a lot of travel and family time when I am home. So I try to capitalize on that. So should we validate, this is question number 12 out of 37. Should we validate every Dryfire drill with live fire reps? Yes and no. I think that if you can validate a Dryfire drill with a live fire rep, it's a very good thing. For instance, if we're going to do something like 4 aces, okay, 4 aces is putting a target at, I think it's 4 yards or 7 yards maybe, and your goal is to get 2 alphas, reload 2 alphas, and do that in 2 seconds or whatever your part time is. So let's just say I'm going to set a 3.5 second part time on this. Let's say I can do a 4 aces in 3.5 seconds in Dryfire, no problem. And I want to go out and test this on the range and see if I can maintain that part time in live fire. So let's see here. We're going to go here. Ooh, that was awesome. Okay, super fast. I crushed that part time, no question about it. Now, I don't know if you guys could see what actually happened though. In the drill itself, when I came up, I'm all over the place. I smash the trigger, I jam a reload, and I come back out here. And yeah, I crushed the part time in Dryfire, but when I go and actually validate that in live fire, there's no way that I'm going to be able to maintain my accuracy, I'm going to maintain the control, or get any consistency in live fire. So we should validate as many of those as we can in live fire, because it's going to highlight whether or not you're cheating yourself in Dryfire. What it should look like in Dryfire is when we actually put the process to work, and we'll do something like this, where we're going to work on seeing what we need to see. Okay. And that one was fully controlled. That one I could do 10 out of 10 times in live fire and actually maintain, a 3.5 second part time, no problem. Now, ideally, I want to get that down to like 2 seconds. If you can get 4 aces in 2 seconds, that's a good part time. And actually, one of the guys who is going to be featured in the Dryfire program that's releasing next week sent us one of those drills, the 4 aces drill that he talks about exactly that. So yes, try to validate as many of those drills as you can in live fire, and then some of them you just can't do. So we're not going to set up a whole bunch of targets and have them perfectly matching what we have in our Dryfire room. All right. Question number 13. No holster. The range won't allow me to draw from the holster. What should I do? Should I even incorporate holster work into my Dryfire? Absolutely. Holsters are the best way to dry fire. You definitely need to, holsters are designed to hold the gun. Even though some ranges don't allow you to work from the holster, that's fine. It is what it is. You should be practicing with a holster. If you want to go to a res, look up on practicescore.com, PRACTI score, practicescore.com. You can find the local competitions to you. Those are all going to be working from holsters. Typically, I guess not all of them. There's some that don't, but you should be looking for places where you can work from the holster. If you can't work from the holster at the range, then you absolutely should be working from a holster at home in dry fire, because that's your only option. You can't validate it at the range, but you should still be proficient with the holster. So with the holster work, whether it's dry fire or at the range. Barron said, I don't think you find a lot of good shooters who think using lasers in dry fire is good training. I agree. There's not a lot of people at the top of the game that use lasers, myself included. I don't use those. Let's see here. How to clean your gun properly. I talk about this in a YouTube video. The question was, I don't often shoot. When do I need to clean my gun? How often? How do I keep it well maintained? My opinion, that stuff is the best that I've ever found. It works amazing. It doesn't dry up like other lubes when you stick it in the safe. And it allows me to clean my gun very easily when I do shoot a lot of rounds. In fact, last week, I was cleaning this one before a match, and it was so caked and filthy, but I was able to just wipe it off. Thank you, beautiful. Hey, she printed off my questions. Thank you, baby. You're welcome. She printed off my questions, so now I have these here. I wrote them all down because the printer wasn't working correctly earlier, so little technical difficulties. You guys get to see the behind the scenes there. So clean it consistently, but it's not like you have to clean it all the time. If you want a full breakdown on how to clean your gun, I have that on my YouTube. I have it for a Atlas. I have it for a rifle. So I can give you a full breakdown on how to clean the rifle. And I also have it for, my concealed carry pistol. So whether you clean them all the time or you only clean them, when they break, that's up to you. I wouldn't encourage you to do that, but I would say make sure they're maintained well. Okay, moving on. So, what are some ways to handle cross-eye dominance? Is it worth learning to shoot with the same hand as the dominant eye, or are there other viable options? Cross-eye dominance affects, I think, 20% of the population. I remember I looked up the stats a while back, and I don't remember what the exact stats were, but it was a significant portion. So if you're cross-eye dominant, it's not the end of the world. The difference between a draw with cross-eye versus draw to your dominant eye, or your primary, right-handed to right eye or right-handed to left eye, is this right here. So if I go right eye or right-handed right eye, it looks like that. If I go right-handed to left eye, it looks like that. Okay. The difference is from here to here. We're only moving the gun in our presentation. I'll show the Instagram guys too. That's the difference. Okay. I'm not doing anything else. With pistol, it's super easy. Run your strong hand and run your dominant eye. Doesn't matter. With rifle, you have to make a decision though. With rifle, if I'm going to shoot cross-eye dominant, I can't run my scope, at least effectively, like this. So I have to decide, am I going to shoot right-handed right eye, or am I going to work left-handed left eye and then shoot my pistol right-handed left eye? A lot of people actually do that. They'll run the long guns left-eyed, okay? As a right-handed shooter, they're going to run rifle lefty, pistol righty, because they're left-eye dominant. Others don't have such a strong dominance on that left eye, so they're going to run, right-handed with the right rifle and actually use the right eye and use the pistol on their left eye as the dominant. So it's a personal decision. What I would encourage you to do is try both directions. If running rifle, try it with running left-handed. It doesn't take that much work. It's not that much more difficult as you think it is. So give it a shot. All right, moving on. That was question number 14 out of 37. We're almost halfway there. Okay, actually, I guess not really. We're like a third of the way there. Question for you, though. Those of you who are in here right now, is this helping? I see one of these comments. This is freaking awesome. What about SIRT pistols? SIRT pistols, they have their place. I don't think that they're the best training tool out there. And then are you prepping or smashing through the trigger regardless of target difficulty? I will answer that here in a minute as far as how we're working the trigger. Here, question number 16, actually. We're question number 16 now. Entering into position. So this is another movement drill. And you can, like I said earlier, you can start off with simply a step over drill where you're on target. You step and you keep it on target to keep that, that movement isolated to the lower half of your body. If you're going to work on more movement and you want to get better at position entries, you can start with a short distance. And you can do this with a physical barricade like this sword that's on the ground. That's my marker. Or you can do it with a visual barricade where we're coming around something that's here. Maybe you have a lamp up, put a door up here, and you can put a target behind that, so you have to come around the visual barricade. Regardless of what you use, the goal should be to get the gun up and stable as soon as possible. So entries and exits are two of the big things that I hammer a ton on. I actually posted a video on my Instagram earlier talking about exits, and whether we're using hard exits or easy exits is determined by the target. The same thing applies to entries. There's a ton of time and effort that we can put into that. I'm not going to dive into that too much here, but maybe we'll save that for another video later on. Like I said, that's all in my Dryfire program as well, so you can hit that up later on. Shooting is a visual sport. In Dryfire, do you concentrate more on the mechanics and what you see visually, acquiring targets, transitions, etc., or the trigger press, prepping the trigger, etc.? Both. And it really depends on what you're working on. So one thing I will say, if you pick up a new gun and you're going to be practicing with that, I want to learn that trigger to the absolute T. I don't want every aspect of that trigger before I dive into a bunch of other drills. Okay. Once I have the trigger work down, I'll revisit that from time to time. But most of the time I'm focusing on visual, what I'm actually seeing, target transitions, throttle control, etc., and my mechanics, reloads, shooting into positions, shooting out of positions, exits and entries, etc. So that's what I'm focusing on more than actually pressing the trigger. The pressing the trigger is probably the smallest part of shooting overall. Whether it's going back to this question from Baron, whether we smash the trigger or prep the trigger, that is totally dependent on the target and your ability as a shooter. I love to smash the trigger on easy up close open targets, but there comes a time that I need to either roll the trigger where I'm doing constant pressure, or I need to prep the trigger and actually pause, make a correction, and smooth press through. Can I show the Genesis Gen 12 on the stream? Not right now. It is locked up in my safe, and I'm not going to go get that out. I'm not going to get that out right now. So let's see here. Moving on, we have question number 18. So now we are actually like almost halfway through. The best way to get comfortable shooting positions for long distance targets. That is something you got to practice. I will tell you that when I work on rifle stuff, I work more than anything barricade work and positional rifle. So I want to make sure that every time I come into a position, I get stable, whether I'm C-clamping or working from a tripod or working barricade, even bipod work. I want to make sure that I'm getting as stable as possible. I do have some drills for that in the multi-gun mastery. And that's something you can go visit dryfiremastery.com. But it's not something I'm going to cover in depth here. That's a whole live stream to itself. Let's see here. Moving on, we have, do you recommend things? Snap caps, we already talked about. Target focus versus dot or sight focus. You should be able to do both. Okay, we ideally want to maintain a target focus 99% of the time. However, if you're running iron sights, there are times that you're going to bring that focus back to the front sight, and that is a good thing to do. Being able to transition that focus and know exactly when it's happening is important. So one thing I'll encourage you is pick a small target, like a screw in the light switch cover. Okay, and what I want you to do is focus on skill, like learning how to change the rods and cones in your eye to shift that focus quickly and actually find the crisp focus that you need, whether it's on the target or on the front sight, is important to do. I would also encourage you to do that with a red dot. Actually focus on the dot and then focus on the target, and then focus on the dot and focus on the target. Learning what that feels like. What does it feel like to actually focus on the dot? That's going to give you a heads up when you're on a stage, like you're shooting and something's going wrong. You're like, shit, what's actually happening? You're like, oh, I know what this feels like. This is me focusing on the red dot. I need to focus back on the target. So that's a really good drill for you guys to learn how you can quickly shift focus. And I talk about that and some of the other things I've got going on. Let's see here. How often should I be doing Dryfire training and or drills? Daily. You should be doing them daily, multiple times a day if you can. Personally, I ramp up my Dryfire as I get into, let's see here. Sorry, I got distracted. Anatomy teacher here is called accommodation, is the ability to shift your focal planes. So if you have the ability to Dryfire every single day, that's awesome. I ramp my Dryfire up as I get ready for a big match and when I have goals. Otherwise, life gets in the way. However, when I was starting out, the first couple of years of doing this, I really did Dryfire pretty much every day. When I was carrying a gun for work, when I was a law enforcement officer, every single day I was doing Dryfire. When I put my gun belt on, I'd clear up my gun and do at least a couple of draws. If I got to the station, especially when I was getting ready for like SWAT school and stuff and trying to get my myself prepared for that, I was doing Dryfire every single day. So that's the best time to do it, daily. If you can get a good daily habit, great. If not, as often as you possibly can. Let's see here. How do you start adding movement to your Dryfire? We already talked about that, just simply doing a step over drill or a step and draw. Your shotgun starts to slack. Maybe you start working on shotgun quad loads. That's doing really well, but then your pistol sucks. You start working on pistol. Now your rifle sucks. Then your transition sucks. So what do you actually do to focus on Dryfire? I focus on one gun at a time unless I'm working gun transitions. Now, if I go to I typically pick two guns to work on. So if I'm going to work on rifle, I'll work a pistol. If I'm going to work on shotgun, I'll work shotgun rifle or shotgun pistol. I like to practice with two guns. But in Dryfire, most of the time I'm going to pick one gun to work on. Occasionally, if I'm working gun transitions, that's a totally different skill set. And I'll focus on that. That's going to be my Dryfire drill that I'm working on is actual gun transitions, whether that's, long, tube-fed shotgun into a dump barrel as I draw, or you go to rifle. So it depends on what you're working on. I would not recommend taking all three guns and trying to Dryfire all three guns all the time. That is going to be too distracting. You want to put dedicated effort. In fact, what I would encourage you even more is actually put the effort for a period of time. So I'm going to say, hey, for the next week and a half, I'm really going to work on rifle. I want to get my rifle up. So I'm going to push rifle skills, rifle drills, and I'm going to really focus on that. And then I'm going to incorporate pistol into that kind of as an aside, maybe as a transition gun or something like that. But I would take a chunk of time and really hammer, 3 or 4 training sessions, Dryfire or live fire, and really hammer one gun and then transition over. That will give you a lot better consistency than just saying, hey, I'm going to train with all 3 guns every single day, or I'm going to change guns every single day. That's good for maintenance. So if you get a really solid skill set as a foundation, then we can kind of use that as a maintenance idea. But otherwise, I wouldn't do that to get better. As a beginner, get very advanced level in both pistol and rifle shooting. What's ideal practice between range live fire and home dry fire? So what's the balance between dry fire and live fire? That's a great question because it depends on your ability to get to the range. If you live on a range, awesome. If you have unlimited ammo, even better. However, most of us don't. So what I would say is dry fire is the foundation, and you should be absolutely putting that as the priority, especially as a newer shooter. Really hammer the dry fire. And then as you progress, you can verify more with live fire. You're using dry fire more as a maintenance or as a sharpener. So I'll use dry fire as a sharpener. Like when I'm getting ready for a match, I will just hammer some reps. Like in 10 months, I have Rifle World Shoot. I'm hammering rifle dry fire and live fire for the next 10 months. My pistol and shotgun aren't going to be completely ignored, but if I'm dry firing and I'm training, I'm going to be absolutely pushing my stuff. Let's see here. Does your dry fire program include this split training? I talk about range time, but the Dryfire program focuses more on Dryfire. It's just focused on Dryfire. Now you can take the drills from Dryfire, put it into Livefire. I also have Livefire drills on the Dryfire Crew community, which is the monthly subscription where we're putting out weekly videos with, that's whatever I'm doing, whether I'm working on Livefire stuff, when I'm working on Dryfire stuff, rifle, shotgun. I talk about zeroing. There's a lot of stuff in there, just kind of whatever's going on at the moment. So yes and no on that question. Is seeing my sights not move during the break a good enough sign that it's a good trigger press? So when we talk about that, if I want to get onto the target and I press the shot through and I see my sights not move, yes, that is a good trigger press. But there, like I said, there's multiple aspects of trigger press. Are we smashing the trigger through, or are we going to prep the trigger, or are we going to roll the trigger? It depends on what we're doing. It depends on the target. So I would encourage you, do that with multiple targets and figure out how quickly you can pull the trigger with different targets. Let's see here. Question number 27. We're crushing these things. We got 10 more to go. You have a 2-hour. I love this. This question is great because it's like a true, it feels like a Bear Grylls scenario. You have a 2-hour training session on the range and you want to work on Dryfire on real-sized targets and barricades. No match coming up. Just trying to improve overall skills. What's your daily go-to? That one just cracked me up. I love it. I don't know why I heard that or read that question in an accent in my head, and I just brought that to you guys, but that's just what happened. So if I have a 2-hour training session on the range and I want to work on Dryfire on real-sized targets and barricades with no match coming up, first of all, I'm probably not going to spend 2 hours Dryfiring. We already talked about that earlier. I'm not going to sit there and just hammer out 2 hours of Dryfire. I want to spread it out, throw some Livefire in. I often do go to the range for a 2-hour section, but most of the time, some of that's setting up targets, some of that's actually shooting, some of that's stuffing mags. And I will oftentimes incorporate Dryfire into the Livefire session. But if I have my target set up and I need to work on something, most of the time when I go to the range, I'm working on target transitions and throttle control. Those are the two big things that I'm always going to hammer. I'm always going to have targets at different distances and typically different sizes. So I'm going to have like targets covered with a no shoot, targets covered with hard cover, steel targets, wide open targets, targets at 10 yards, targets at 25 yards. So I'm constantly doing target transitions and I'm constantly doing throttle control because of the distance or the presentation of the targets. Those to me are the biggest areas that you can gain time. And it's, in my opinion, what really shows a true good practical shooter. If you're able to shoot any target at the appropriate speed and get the hits on there as quickly as possible, that to me is like you made it. You made it as a practical shooter. And then you throw movement in, even better. So if I have a 2-hour session on the range and I'm going to throw Dryfire into it, I will bounce between Livefire and Dryfire, not just say, hey, these are the drills that I'm going to run. And I usually don't have a set target setup. I'm constantly changing the targets that I have in front of me. All right. Will it prepare me for different situations that might arise? Dryfire being the question. I'd like to train to be more comfortable with my weapons and be excellent at weapons handling. Wouldn't we all? Yes, it will help you train. Dryfire is amazing. It's the best training tool out there. How do you reproduce trigger function from a quality trigger system during Dryfire and also do so with appropriate time pressure? So one of the drills that I like to do for this, which is just like, how do we work the trigger under time pressure and working with, in such a way that we're going to be able to reproduce that in Livefire. Trigger control at speed is one of those drills. So we talked about this a little bit earlier where I'll set up the timer, aim in at the target, and smash that trigger through. Okay. If it's a more precise target, then I'll slow that trigger press down and really see the control. That's how I'm able to bounce. Alpha Elite says he uses Mantis X for dry firing. We talked about some of the drills or some of the tools out there earlier. It's not my favorite. I don't particularly like. I don't like the coaching they give you. Most of the coaching that comes through those apps is is BS. I'm not a huge fan on that. There are some good things about it as far as like making it a game and making it interesting, but overall it's not my favorite. So I would encourage you to focus more on the process of what you're actually working on than try to find out, hey, is this laser going where I want it to go? I don't know. I'm not going to hate on it, but I don't use it, and I don't know any other top shooters that do. Let's see here. Okay. How does corrective eye surgery? Guys, we're 30 questions in. 30 questions now we've covered. We got 7 more to go. So thank you guys for sending these in, first of all. And thanks for sticking through these. So how does corrective eye surgery like LASIK affect shooting drills with iron sights and red dots? I have seen people that have gotten surgery and absolutely crushed it with post-surgery with their eyesight. They're able to see a lot better and focus on the front sight a whole lot better. And I've seen people who've had post-surgery where they're struggling. There's not a set answer on this. I wanted to address the eyesight thing because a lot of people, especially as they're getting older, they do get the surgery, and then a lot of people go to a red dot just because you're able to focus on that more effectively. So Jason says it works for sure. The LASIK helping. So that's a good thing. So reloads in kneeling positions. There are a few times where you're going to have reloads that you're in a low port. It's not often, and it's not a great place to be. But if you do get in that situation, the same spot. But if I'm kneeling down, it may change a little bit. So let's see if we can get this angle down here, and I'll angle this one down. So if I'm kneeling, a lot of times if I'm going to a low port, I will keep one leg up and I'll bend over like this. And if I have to do a reload, I'm going to sit up and get that reload in there like so. Okay, if I'm all the way down, I'm really in a low port, I can still do the same thing. I just have to move my upper body more than I would if I was standing in a static shooting position. So that's what I would say about doing reloads in a kneeling position. We got a couple more questions here. How to know if you're making progress? I love this question. How do we actually track progress in Dryfire? A lot of times progress is difficult to track because we don't have target stuff that we can actually shoot and see the results on, but we can put a par timer. So being able to run, dropping my mags, being able to run a par time on a drill can show if you're making progress. And then what's really going to show if you're making progress is your consistency and how fluid things feel. So if, for instance, if we're doing reloads, well, what makes a good reload? A good reload is my ability to drop the mag. Okay, we drop the mag, we get the fresh mag in, rebuild the grip, and put an accurate round on target after the reload. Those are the steps of the process, right? How do we track whether or not we're getting better at it? Well, we can put a par time on and say, if I need to get that reload done in 5 seconds, and we take that shot and we do the reload and we come back up in 3 seconds, hey, that's good. Now, how do we get better? We drop the time down. We push ourselves to get that down into 2 seconds. Okay, and then we push it down to get into 1 second. If I can get myself down into a 0.8 reload, that's spicy. I like that. Okay, for me, that's really pushing it. I'm happy with about a 1 to 1.2 second reload on a regular target. So that's how you see if you're making progress. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And there are absolutely days, if you're doing this consistently, where you're like, God, I just feel like I'm not making any progress. My reloads are still screwed up even after putting this work in and day out over and over and over again. It sucks. Why am I even doing this? It's just like going to the gym. Some days you feel like it. Some days you don't. Sometimes you're going to actually see the progress. And you'll see that breakthrough, and it's a great feeling. And then some days it's not. You're not going to feel it. Let's see here. How about some open shooter drills? I will have some more open shooter drills for you 3-gunners in the near future. We're going to be working on some bipod and tripod stuff with the rifle, and we'll do some shotgun stuff. Open shooting is not that much different than tac ops, except for the shotgun. Like, that's really the big difference. And then learning. Do you have any links or recommendations on maybe some gear to get for competing, like belts, mag pouches, these sorts of things? belts, there's 1,000 different belts out there. I don't have any like great recommended shell caddies, and share things or take it off if we don't need it for that stage. So it's a great option there. If you're not shooting 3-gun and you just want to set up a specific belt for USPSA or IDPA or something like that, there's a ton of different options out there. Double Alpha, JJ Rakaza has his own belt now. There's so many different options. Like seriously, just go look up belts. It's hard to go wrong with those things. Let's see here. We've got mag pouches. Really solid Bolteron mag pouches. They're not Kydex. They're a little bit thicker, a little bit harder, but they're not like super thick like the double and triple layer Kydex mag pouches. They have a lot of adjustment in the back, and they also happen to match my holster, which is super great because we have the Priority 1 Joe Farrell Signature Series holster. So the holster I helped design with Priority 1 holsters. Super clean draw. Okay, they make these holsters very consistently. It is a very clean and smooth draw. So you can see here, it comes out super easy. We have this big brass thumb screw on here that we can tighten this down. Even with it tighten it down, it comes out really easy. Now, a lot of people are like, well, how the hell do you use that holster in 3-gun? The way that we designed this was that if we have outward rotation, okay, so for instance, if I push on the grip of this gun and lift, it's stuck in the holster. If I do my draw wrong, where I actually like rotate that elbow out, it's stuck in the holster. So it's going to force you to clean up your draw a little bit. If I pull straight up, you can see it comes right out, no problem. As soon as I add rotation, it's locked in. What we figured out is as you're running, this is rotating, okay? And that rotation locks it into the holster. That's why I can still use this holster in 3-gun and it doesn't bump out, knock on wood. That being said, I have seen it bump out before. It's not a foolproof situation. If you want to have 100% retention, you need a level 2, level 3 holster. If you bounce this straight up, which I've seen happen if you put it on a drop, like a drop and offset, sometimes you'll be running. I've seen it happen twice now, both of them friends of mine, where they bumped that holster, and because they were bouncing straight up and down, it bumped the gun out of the holster. So be aware of that. One was at a match, one was in practice. So 2 different people, different sides of the country, but it can happen. It is a good holster though. It's like I said, the Priority 1 competition setup. So, and you'll see my name on there. It's all over there. So it's pretty cool stuff. I like it. It makes me happy. Let's see here. Looking for drills that point out my weaknesses and test specific things for competition. Guess what? Shameless plug. On October 24th, I will be dropping the competition handgun Dryfire Mastery Series. So this is a huge course that I've been putting together. Over 70 videos, over 40 drills, along with another like 20 drills from guest instructors. It's going to be amazing. This is where you're going to be able to point out your weaknesses. You're going to be able to hone those skills to fix your weaknesses, and you're going to be able to test specific things for competition. And it will give you structure for your dry fire, structure and motivation. Because God, we all know like going to the gym is tough. Dry firing, that's kind of tough to get the motivation to do because you're not actually shooting. So that's the answer for that one. Bud Light versus live fire. I don't understand this question, but I left it in here just because it was kind of funny. Bud Light versus live fire. Bud Light kind of identified who they are this year, so I'm going to go with live fire 100% every single time. No Bud Light for me. Thank you very much. Is dry fire? Nate, this is question 37. We made it. We made it all the way to the end. Is dry fire training worth the time? Yes. There's your answer. Yes, it is 100% worth the time. You should absolutely be doing dry fire training, regardless of whether you're in competition or you're starting out or you're highly experienced trying to get better. It doesn't matter what position you are, but of eating or breathing or taking a shower. I hope some of you guys at matches, you need to take some more showers, but yes, it's worth the time. Now I'm going to take a second. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments right now, because I'm going to take about 5 more minutes to go through these and see if you guys have any questions and answer them. Let's see here. We had some loss here. What is the name of this program and where can I find it on YouTube? You can find it at dryfiremastery.com. That's where all of my programs are, dryfiremastery.com. That is where I have the multi-gun mastery. That's a 30-day course. I have the handgun foundations. That's already up there. And I also have the Dryfire crew community. That's where I'm posting videos consistently that are longer form training content. On the 24th, so 1 week from today, the competition handgun course is going to be up there. It's only going to be live. The registration is only going to be open for a week, or maybe it's 5 days. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look at that. But we're cutting it off. We're only going to open it up for a certain period of time so we can pump a ton of information into these people, and then we'll open it up later on down the road. But if you want to get on these this initial entry, that's going to be open in 1 week from today. Let's see here. How often should I include my dot during dry fire and live fire if my focus isn't 100% yet on the target? So that's a great question. A lot of people love to talk about including the dot. That's where you take your red dot and you put something over the front of it so you can actually see the dot, but your left eye is forcing you to focus on the target, because if you just focus on the dot, you can't see anything through it. This is a great tool. It's a great training tool. I see people who use it literally all the time. And I don't understand that, because you're taking out the ability for your right eye to see the target, period. And that's your dominant eye, or vice versa the other way. It is a good tool. Use it frequently, especially if you don't have your target focus 100% yet. Bounce between the two of them, but don't use it exclusively. Okay, there's no set number of times that you need to do it, but I would encourage you to bounce between the two until you have that target focus. And it may be that you never have it fully. Maybe you do half a range session with it included and half of it with it not included. Let's see here. Dumping shoddy during 3-gun, just hit safety or clear. If you do clear, if you clear, do you still need to engage safety? This is a good question. I see a lot of people, especially with these big, long box mag shotguns, like I like them. When you dump it, just dropping the mag, racking the round out, and dumping it. And it's a very effective technique. And especially with the AK platforms, the safety is a little pain in the ass. But that's the alternative to it. So what I would say is I like to throw the safety on, regardless of whether or not I'm racking the round out. It's not that much faster. Either way, I've seen it go either way. I actually put a lot of reps into this to see which way was faster. And what I found was I was not quite as consistent with the rack and dump, drop mag, rack and dump, as I was with throwing the safety on and dumping. Most of the time, or not most of the time, about half the time, I will still drop the mag and safe it. If the shotgun is completely clear, you don't have to put the safety on. However, if you inadvertently thought it was completely clear and you didn't quite rack that round out and you left the safety off, that can be a match DQ, can be a stage DQ, and it can be a heavy penalty. Most places it's just a heavy penalty, like a 60-second penalty, which is going to screw up your stage anyway. But you don't have to throw it on safe. So what I would say is throw it on safe every time. That's what I like to do. That it's gaining enough by dumping the mag and racking to warrant not putting the safety on. Okay, so for me, I look at 3 things. Anytime anybody offers me a new technique or a new piece of gear, I look at 3 things. Number 1, does it make me more or less accurate? So if we take this technique, it has nothing to do with accuracy, so we don't have to worry about it. Number 2, does it make me faster or slower? If we say, hey, this makes me 1/10 of a second faster, that's better, right? And number 3, and probably one of the most important, is it consistent? So if it's not consistent, yeah, I can get 1/10 of a second faster, but if it's not consistent, then it's not worth doing. If you can get consistency through repetition, maybe it is worth doing, but is that repetition worth it? So one of the concerns that people talk about is bumping the safety back off, like especially on a 2011, when you dump a 2011, it has to be on safe. Sometimes that safety can get bumped off, but not if you dump it right. So they would rather drop the mag, rack the round out, and then dump it and have it confirmed that way. Totally up to you. It's one of those skill sets that, because it doesn't affect those 3 things very much, it's basically the same speed. It doesn't affect accuracy, and the consistency can be built by repetition. It becomes a personal preference thing. So pick whichever one you want to do. Doesn't really bother me either way. One of those things that you should be going on the range and testing it out when you can, when the drill applies to the range, for instance, a 4 aces or an L pres or something like that. If I can do an L pres, which is a turn, draw, and shoot 3 targets, do a reload and shoot 3 targets, and I can do that in 4 seconds in Dryfire, but then I go to the range and I do it in 8 seconds or 7 seconds, well, that's not actually doing the right things in Dryfire. Favorite drills like 0.1 tactics, cold start to run while dry firing. Have you tried the Dryfire Ninja website? I've not tried Dryfire Ninja website. I will check that out at some point. And favorite quest. Let's see here. I'm going to jump back in here real quick for about 1 more minute and see if there's any other questions that I missed. Okay, I think that's pretty much it, guys. I'm sure there were more questions that I probably missed, but feel free to shoot me a message. We answered 37 questions that were sent in on the question to my email list. And then we answered another, 10 questions in here. So that's a lot of freaking questions. I hope you guys got some information out of that. I hope you guys had some good entertainment and good quality training out of this. If you have any further questions, feel free to hit me up. You can send me a message anytime, and I'll be happy to help you out. Again, just appreciate you guys coming in, joining in, tuning in, and we're going to call this thing quits. I will post this up on the Instagrams, and I don't know if I'm able to do this on the YouTubes. So we'll see. Cheers, guys.